Thank you very much for the wonderful presentations. I think by no means I'm in a place to do any summarization or feedback or, I don't know, curatorial thinking, but so I think I might just jump right into the questions. And I do have maybe one question for each presenter. And first for Marat. My question is, was it really like the last minute change that you completely switch out the whole presentation? And what really promote you to do that?
Yes, thank you for your question. Because I suppose that changing, we criticize all, we have very more problems, of course. And I suppose we feel that we must change something. But what we must change? And I suppose that my father researched this question more than 30 years. That's why I decided that stories about him will be interesting for us, and maybe we find some things. And it is ironical, his stories, and of course we cannot. I think we cannot feel his ideas directly. Yeah, something ironical. That's why I decided to prepare this.
Thank you. I actually thought it was quite a surprising and also interesting experience because everything, there's no, it's not a critique or anything for film meeting, but also everything feels so planned out, rehearsed, very programmed, and everything is perfect. But here comes a little surprise, and also made me think a lot about the improvisation and also how art really should play sort of this idea of antithesis in a situation like this. And then the question for Taos. I think what kind of struck me a lot during your presentation is how you foreground the materiality of the objects, not only in your slides and work, but also you deliberately choose to use the microphone to kind of amplify the sound of the interaction that you have with the material. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that in your practice.
I think it's actually a recurrent thing from yesterday as well. We had a performance with similar obsessions with sounds, and I'm just a crazy fan of ASMR videos that I watch online, and it's kind of these fantastic videos where basically someone just enters your personal space, goes around with these 3D mics, washes your hair, and you feel not so alone, just kind of when you are. So I kind of derived it from that. Unfortunately, kind of our sound system was a little bit limited. Otherwise, I would have penetrated your mind completely. So it came from that, and also it was this time I tried to be very limited with my language. It was for me it was an experiment, and like it's sort of a question of also just what you choose to speak when you make an artwork, and so kind of the limited language, the sort of spoken objects, and it's also kind of another type of affect, I suppose, that I was interested in. But I keep thinking about sort of the recurrent things that sort of recurred, be it space wormholes, be it sort of Lenin's presence sort of experience, the collective meditation that we did yesterday. And it kind of brings me to this, to the question of different methodologies that artists use, like being a beautiful jugglers of times and kind of references. But I always wonder, like, I don't know, maybe it's a question also kind of for Simon, like is there, what is left? Like, is there, like, what do you want me to leave from your Aunt Frank's house? Like, what do you want me to take away? Like, I know it's a very basic question, but it's something that I constantly...
But do you mean from the experience of visiting Hope House, or from this talk today?
Well, from your house, your Aunt Frank's house, be it today, the model that you did today for us, or be it the actual thing presented at your gallery.
two things, I think. One is recognition, and one is acceptance. And one is that you go in and you see yourself in a mirror somehow, and then you see it all together, and you see how ridiculous it is when all of these objects that populate our lives sort of boil down and presented next to each other, but also how beautiful they are, and that you can accept essentially that they exist, because there is this kind of fascism that we always are trying to fight about, you know, whether it's getting stuck in a phone queue because of the phone provider or whatever, having to buy something from IKEA. You know, the fascisms of everyday life in our wealthier parts of the world are kind of, they're in everything, from whatever level of luxury to that we don't have choices, and that we're infants in the face of what's happening in the world. And that's, in a way, the experience I want to create is one that is a sort of joy at experiencing those things for almost for the first time. Later, to understand that we can somehow use this material that is perceived as finished. These things that are products that we'd say, well, we can't do anything more with it. You either make loads of money, buy a creme de la mer, look fucking amazing, or you don't. You slide down the, you know. But we have a choice, and we have a choice to put things together and think about them, and we can control our environment somehow. And that, I think, I want people to feel that there's freedom behind it, because I feel very, very free, and that's the only thing I think I can honestly communicate. But I have a question for both of you. Sorry. Which is on that matter. I'm coming to you next. But that is about the fact, because when I was watching your performance, you know, one of the things that I kept thinking is obviously, you know, it's so sexual. It's incredibly sensual. You're putting a lollipop in your mouth. You're, you know, like, let's be honest, you're attractive to me, at least. And you are, you know, you are using it. And one question that kept recurring is, to what extent, or how do you describe, you know, the capital that you have as a woman, and to what extent do you permit, conceptualize that in your work and foreground it as part of an argument, or do you put it away? Like, where do you stand on this? You're an attractive woman putting a lollipop in your mouth on stage, formally. But you're doing so much more, but that's still happening.
But I'm also defacing a Lenin in my mouth. I'm also kind of turning him into something else, and I'm also watching people kind of doing the same thing. But I think it's like it's if you think about ASMR, there's this kind of line between, you know, the sort of the twinkling sensation that you get and kind of this erotic. And so I tried at least to balance in between this sort of embrace of people in my body, not only kind of through my sexuality, but through like, just like, I don't know, mouth sounds, like borderline, let's put it that way. But if I answer your question as a story, I have this fantastic top that I love. And it's this, you know, this like 3D printing. So there's this tiger, and basically the cheeks are exactly where my breasts are, and then there's this mouth. And I like wore it once on a talk, and it's just incredible, because you just watch the gaze, and I mean, for me it's a game. Like, and also like when you kind of bend, it's like it's opening its mouth constantly. So I mean, I play this thing, and it's a fun.
It's an unfair question, obviously, but I'm interested in where you stand on it, because you mentioned ASMR, and I also love watching ASMR. But it's very gendered. It's very much about being a woman, cocooning you in. And I'm gay, and I watch it, and it's sort of funny, but I just don't want to be treated like that by a woman, you know? I want to have a conversation like this, but I don't want to be stroked with nails or whatever. And then you watch men do it, and you're sort of like, this is funny. It doesn't work with men somehow, because it's this, I don't want to be nurtured or cared for by a man or taken in. So, I'm just sort of curious about, you know, you don't hit on the politics of it, but you obviously think about it.
Yeah. What's your question for Marat?
Sorry, yeah. It's kind of similar. I'm sorry, you don't really understand anything we're talking about. Do you, how much just to get a sense, like... Yeah? Okay, cool. Can you translate? Yeah. Because it's a similar thing that I really enjoyed with your performance and made me think of Nancy's comment earlier today, which is about this self... I'm going to say two more words and then you can... About like the idea of self exoticizing, or like filling an image. And the thing I liked with your performance, or took from it, was... And the thing in a way, because I don't even... I wrote down the country you're from, and I don't even know where you're from. Like, I've got no idea. But I have an image of this Soviet
One of the
fantasy.
stands, but one of the stands, yeah, that's the running joke.
And in a way, he kind of totally confirmed that, but made it absurd. Like, yeah, I mean, he kind of overstated the stereotype. With...
Microphone.
Well, I'm just translating it in Russian.
Is that how intentional is that, without losing the magic of it?
No. No, because you know, I did more presentations, especially for our auditorium, than in Kyrgyzstan. We work more with Kyrgyz people and speak in any dialects about with our auditorium. And no any stereo, no, because I use this form in my day every day. I didn't like this telephone like this, you know, this iPhone, for example. My wife gave me especially for New York. I no use like this. I use like this, you know, the operators. And I didn't understand these very high technologies. That's why I didn't understand like these projectors. It's very crazy for me, for my understanding. For me, more easy, more проще, easy, yeah, more simple, wrote and draw 2 slides. It is easy for me. It is style for thinking for me. And for me, no interesting how it will be exotic for others. No, it isn't
It's just the way
interesting.
it is. He's not doing it.
Sure, but if I can push this a bit further, there's also an image of certain countries in which what you have just said fits so perfectly into a narrative. And it's not in any way to denigrate what you've done, because I totally enjoyed it and I thought it was great. It's just a question of that, of course, from certain perspectives, can be expected as something you would say.
То есть, иными словами, получается, есть определенный стереотип, который образовался, да, касательно этих стран, которые вы представляете. Да, я этим сам не хочу как-то нивелировать, да, какие-то моменты, но получается, все ваше выступление так или иначе в этом контексте, оно как бы ожидаемо, потому что вы проецируете тот стереотип, который имеют другие.
Yes, very interesting question, but I think it isn't important question. Yeah. Why? Because I said that it isn't stereotype. I didn't know. I touch very important question about changing of the world, about Marxism, because in our post-Soviet region, Marxism is very high. It is very high. No discussion, you know, no discussion about it. and for me, experience of my father, it is not very locally. It is very общее, very unified question.
Marat, you can,
I think very
Marat,
unified.
you can speak in Russian and he can translate it for you if you like.
Окей. Ну, я имею в виду, что вопрос же не если говорить о содержании, то само содержание, оно очень не локальное. Оно даже, я бы сказал, более чем общее. И даже, может быть, еще не дозрели многие в Нью-Йорке до этого вопроса. Что если вот так?
Well, actually, I think I'll be paid after this. What I'm trying to say is that the content is not realistic to something local. In my opinion, it is very common and it's very universal. And I do think that most of us are not ready to perceive this one.
И скажи, что, может быть, это в Нью-Йорке еще не дозрели до этих вопросов?
Maybe New York is not mature to get this content. Yes, they're not ready for it.
I think something very interesting, if I may say, actually my impression of the three presentations was that, your presentation, what struck me was, I became very conscious that we are coming from a kind of, well, we call it, global contemporary art world, and we are steeped in a certain kind of discourse. And halfway through your presentation, I suddenly had this sense that there's a kind of difference in strategy, that you are coming from a point where actually the challenge is to communicate a line, a thread very simply, a kind of unified message without the noise. Whereas those of us that sometimes, and art critics and curators, sometimes we're very guilty. Our job is to complicate, is to Simon refers to the web. I think his presentation to me seems to be sort of trying in his context to resist that web instead, but to find a kind of thread, which is why I think he keeps going back to words like saying it simply, saying it directly, things like that. So it's an interesting kind of view, because...
I mean, but just to be clear, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because, of course, the exoticization goes both ways. And I'm very aware that, of course, it's like...
I don't think he's...
Sure, no, but I'm being honest, which is I am standing, exoticizing someone. We do it, I'm judging, I'm looking, trying to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm reading everything.
Mara, you want to say something?
Ну, я думаю, что это проблема тогда того, кто это смотрит, да, а не наоборот.
So, well, basically, he's trying to say, this is not Marat's concern, it's the concern of the person watching it.
Well, I just want to follow the trend of thought that Boon was just saying. Actually, I also see how this interesting relationship play out with the image and the language, right? Because it's this really minimal amount of languages that is needed in trying to put this performance together in Marat's case. So, and then I would divert the question to Simon. As I said earlier, I do have a question for you. So, when I was looking up your presentation, first of all, I don't know about the Anne Frank house, so I had to look it up on Google. Very last minute. Secondly, I was worried about you stepping on that bottle of water you put on here halfway through your presentation, and I had this concern that it's gonna fall and you're gonna step in the water. But actually, you were perfectly aware of the water while you were giving the presentation, and it's extremely articulating. And there's this very complex threads of narratives in the presentation. And that just made me think about your comment later on through your presentation. Actually, you're kind of fighting this misconception of people trying to understand your work is about storytelling and narrative. And I kind of just curious, how do you position the relationship of your presentation as such and with the work, the Hope House in the gallery setting for you, because there is certainly this narrative, very emphasized on narrative for today's presentation, and how that kind of play out the relationship.
They're two different things, and it's very pragmatic. I don't have a theoretical position on it because made this project in Israel, and there's not many people going to Israel, but I want a lot of people to see it and know about it. So the best thing I can do is come here and tell you in the best way I can about the work. I can't bring the house here. I'm not going to stand in the exhibition and talk in this way about it in any sense. So I see them as completely separate things, but this is a communication of that project, and the other is the experience of it, and you can go in and have whatever your own experience within that. It's a sculptural experience, so it's very different. People always ask about this, how does it work, is the performance and artwork and all of this and this and this? It's an art historian's question, and they should do it.
I guess that's also why I give the introduction as I don't know about Anne Frank house. So I guess if I do go to the gallery and enter the space, have a sculptural experience, is that piece of story important to you?
Well, there's labels in the house, as you've seen. They're very didactic labels, and they're about labeling as well, and the font has been chosen. They're a specific size that are round enough to make everyone feel welcome. They don't make the information feel too difficult to grasp. They're friendly. It's kind of based on the text, but bigger. It doesn't look elegant. It doesn't look oblique or artistic. It's for you, it's also knowingly that, and that's what I consider makes it an artwork, because it's about completely controlling the experience of people through materials, and not trying to plan what comes out the other side, but at least doing my bloody hardest to make this giant sculpture say what I want to say.
So leading from that the issue of Anne Frank and the project, and you made a point about not talking about Anne Frank per se or the Holocaust. So I was interested, why did you choose the name Hope House specifically? Because and I say this from the perspective of someone who does know about the story of Anne Frank, about the Holocaust, and of that particular site.
It's more of a personal feeling, but I've always had a problem with the word hope, because I feel hope is always in the future, and you're always chasing it, and every time you get close, hope goes further away. That always exists as a fantasy, and I believe in acting now and looking at what is existing in front of you, and that there are great things and there are terrible things in front of you now, and that hope is a mirage that covers what we're essentially living on a day-to-day basis. So I don't believe in there being some greater future coming to us if we all just hope and pray. I think we should really engage with what's happening now, get our hands dirty, and smell it, touch it. And that, for me, is the definition of hope, because you're actually alive suddenly, and you're in some form in control of the environment around you. If you don't control the environment, it will control you. And that's the world we live in today, and it's getting more and more controlling. So hope it's not an ironic title, but it's an empty title.
Just like in a sense, the other reason is because the house actually is empty.
Yes,
it hardly has any actual material.
It's not a home.
Yeah.
Do you have more comments? Should we open
I think
to the
we should
audience?
open.
Maybe there are a lot of questions. Is someone giving the...
Where's the mic?
Yeah, who has extra mic?
It's up there. If there's a respondent that's raising their hand, they should get the first. If there is a respondent, that's okay.
Right here.
A key question for Simon. I noticed that after the Edelweiss episode, the lights came on and you had shed some layers of clothing. I was wondering if that was a strategy to arouse some of the audience. It certainly caught my attention. So you don't need to answer that. I recognize that might put you on the spot. It'd be a rude question to ask. But I had a question for both Marat and for Simon, or a comment. I feel like there's a very interesting tension going on between the two of you. And it reminds me actually of Dai Wang Yi, the artist that we saw performing yesterday. I happen to know a bit about Dai Guangyu's life, and I'm not sure whether or not I'm actually learning about Marat's life and his father's life, or whether or not I'm learning about a work of art in progress. Okay, but I have a hunch that I'm really learning about Marat's father's life and his life. Okay, and there's a way in which there's an authenticity to a certain artist and their bodies of work and their refusal, okay, to participate in the things which Simon and I think, you and I think, you can't refuse to participate. But you need to be aware, okay, of your participation. And without that awareness of that participation, you therefore become controlled. So I think awareness is key for us, and then the degree to which we participate is a choice that we make. But for some people, there actually is a strategy of complete refusal. Okay, and I'm wondering whether or not, if you could address that. I mean, if you think what I'm saying about what you're trying to help us achieve and the degree of awareness is accurate, and then whether or not Marat would agree that in what he's doing and his father's doing is there is a stance of refusal in terms of participating in the capitalist monsters or the capitalism that capitalist system that we're all confronted with.
I think one of the most exciting things in this conversation is to have, like, we're both completely disagreeing and opposed in many of the ways that we're viewing things, but we're being both very honest about how we're seeing it. And that for me is a dialogue, because I don't get the sense either of us is trying to sugarcoat our words or pretend to be understanding of each. Like, I think I get what you do, and I enjoy it on a very deep level, but I would not be myself if I didn't say, but where does it fit in my cosmos? I'm listening to you, and I totally believe in your autonomy and your right to have that, but I also believe in my right to ask these questions. So that doesn't answer a question.
So it isn't not autonomy. Yes? Autonomous, yes. Did we have little time? Yeah.
Yes.
Now I study life of Lenin before his revolution, and many communists who worked with him and who lived in Europe in this period, they tried to do any definitions. And before revolution, Lenin read again Hegel. And when he read again, he find something interesting. In dialectics, many elements can mix, and local and unlocal mix and work together. That's why we didn't mark something. We must see how dynamics of some elements. And when you see my presentation, your presentation, we try to see these dialogues between these presentations. See this as dynamics, not only my presentation. Sorry for my English, but I try like this. Not only marked this, it is so, or it is so. No. Yes. If we saw like this, we cannot change some. We cannot change. We can only define, but no change. I think so. It's my opinion. Thank you.
Other questions? Here.
Hi, I have a question for Simon. My name is Holiday Powers. I'm here from Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. And
In Qatar?
yeah. And so I think it's interesting about the structure of this idea of a continental perspective, because the more directly regional question that I would have as somebody that is here from Qatar would be about the place of Israel within the piece itself. And so my question is, I've been trying to figure out how to ask this, because what strikes me about your work is that you are so ready to say what we would so often leave unsaid, that you're ready to think in these really complicated and critical ways. And yet I wonder about, in part because there has been a conversation about what constitutes political activism and what constitutes silence. And my sense of your work is that it's in a lot of ways secondary.
What is the political?
The political. That the political that you are talking about, like the fascism of the everyday, and you're sort of picking apart these different sorts of inequalities in a way that is also embracing.
But that's absolutely because other people are secondary to me. They're outside of my body. So my lived experience is primary. Of course it's all blurred and messy, but I don't think politically before I act myself. My gut does not digest because of a political party that is in power. You know, we are constructed in that way, and I don't believe there's a way to operate outside of that. So, yeah, the politics is secondary to my thoughts, because my thoughts are not controlled. They just happen, and they're in reaction to what I'm seeing biologically and feeling. The politics comes when I say, how does this live with other people? And that's how I define politics, not through parties, but I think of it as the polis, as others. And those are people who I think around me, who I know, who I'm conversing with. I can't create a larger picture really than that, but I try to surround myself with as many broad voices that will contradict me. I seek that, and that's how a project is developed. I've talked to many, many people. And it's interesting on this point, you haven't asked your question yet, but I'm going to just carry on. When I was developing the project, I said I was in Europe, I was in Germany, I was in Britain, I was in the States, and I said, I'm thinking of doing this, and I presented it, and the general consensus was, this is dangerous. You can't really do this in Israel. You're not Israeli. You know, they ranged from, you know, we get the complexity, but it's dodgy ground. Like, we get you're smart, but no one's smart enough to get it on this level, and it will go to, haven't the Jews suffered enough? They don't need your fucking house arriving there as well. And the Israelis I spoke to before were just like, well, I mean, I don't know what it's about, but I'm ready to see it. The conversation is so much more complex there because it's happening there, you know, and it's a conversation that's been happening for decades and decades. This is something I, of course, have thought about, and it wasn't during this project, but it was the question of, do I work with a gallery in Israel? That was the first question. Do I go to Israel? And the first thing I thought is I have to experience what it is, first of all, because I know that there is crimes happening, and I know it's a terrible situation, but I have to have a lived experience. I mean, I can state the things that I'm interested in, and I have stated that. And of course I can't argue for your experience, and I can't involve every single voice in that. But as an artist, you know, what I'm trying to do is be as honest as I can about my experience. And I've never said that I'm not doing that. It's not a justification, and I totally believe you're right to say this, and I'm grateful for it. But I cannot encompass every single problematic in that. I do take the criticism that the inclusion of the apartheid tickets is very token within the question of that, which is, for many people, an apartheid state. However, the focus for me is about the way in which those things are turned into irrelevant, almost entertainment factors that are consumed. That's where my interest lies. I cannot encompass the pain of so many different parties in that. So this is the best I can do, and I believe in it.
Yeah, I was actually, there's not much I can follow up from that because mine was actually a critique as well. I really enjoyed, are we out of time?
Yes.
Yeah, so Marwa, I'd like to just say, I just loved your presentation, your performance. It is Marwa, right?
It's Tao.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I loved Mara's presentation.
Yeah. I'm sitting next to a roommate, and that's what she told me your name was. So, no. So, I thought just in terms of a critique of capitalism, it was so successful. I don't know if that's what you were trying to do, but in terms of like using food and consumption, your own body as an object, because you did become sexualized, but in this really kind of nuanced and subtle way, I just loved it. And from there, I'm going to go on to Simon as well, because, is that for me? I haven't even asked my question, but, no, so, because I'm someone who's participated in the American economy and then been away for many years, so I can kind of see it as an insider and an outsider. And I've been to Amsterdam. I never went to the Anne Frank house because I did feel this kind of guilt of participating in the spectacle. I read the book when I was in my teenage years. It moved me deeply. And I didn't want to. Standing in the line for me was not about empathy and compassion. It was about, every moment I spend there, I'm participating in the spectacle. And every spectacle, loses its meaning, because it's...
But there's still an experience to be had,
so
which you don't know until you've done it.
Exactly. So that's what I also got from your presentation, is that, maybe there is something that one can gauge in terms of meaning, which adds to your experience of having, say, read a book, or knowing a certain history. However, my question is that, or my problem here is that, by taking a spectacle and creating a simulacrum of the spectacle, you're augmenting it. And the whole problem with American capitalism, design capitalism, is that it is hegemonic and it moves. That's what we talk about when we talk about global capitalism, and it takes over everything. And I'm very conscious as a queer woman of color that, that you're participating in an economy because you've been able to do this. In a country that still, as she said, has a Holocaust going on, that it has a very problematic history of its own, that you are allowed to do this. And you're allowed to, there's on one hand a critique because you're kind of encasing these, haloed objects, these objects we worship like Creme de la Mer or whatever it is, and this wonderful toilet by Philip Stark. But you're also the author of it, and you're also participating in it. The very fact that, for example, I was very struck that you recreated Beyonce's outfit, using expensive, German tailors to do this. For me, that's a complete, almost joyful participation, and there's something almost perverse about that. So that's kind of...
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I thrive in perversity because I don't know what else to do, if I'm honest with myself. When I was a student, of course, I was like, do I live like this? What does that mean? What does this mean? And I don't know.
I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
but we're going to have to stop.
Okay.
We have time to have the discussions.
But I agree.
Let's
100%
all
agree.
just take a very big, deep breath. Okay? Let's do this because it's very important for us to take a big, deep breath. Come on, let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. Okay? Because I'm feeling a little bit out of body experience, and it's very normal. You know why? Because we're talking about very important things. And when we're talking about very important, profound things, we're going to be very uncomfortable. And the emotions come up, and they try to do all kinds of things. But what is important is to stay grounded and understand that there are perspectives, and there are individual perspectives. And while individual perspectives you may not agree with, or you may not that there's a value to a particular way of exploring something. And while I myself have many questions for Simon, for Marat, and for Taos, and they're incredibly complicated, complex practices that I don't understand, what I can feel in my cells is that they are absolutely exploring very deep things, and from very almost like that. What Simon has been using the word honest repeatedly. I feel his honesty. You know, I feel the honesty of every person. Whether that honesty is actually has truth in it, whether it's a universal truth or not, that's something that that each one of us will have to go home with and truly contemplate on and say, wow, what did that mean? And give it the benefit of the doubt. Because if we all get triggered and want to only hold on to our own program of ideas, because we're all programmed. Sorry, it's like when we came here, when we were born, when Simon was singing that song, he was not this person. He was something else. And so how do we unpack our own conceptual, someone used inventory, and constantly question this inventory and say, what does this mean to me today? What does this mean to the world today? Capitalism, in a way, there is a reason why all these three people were in this one panel. Because we are talking about the ways of the world, right? There's a true reason why the three of them ended up being together. And in fact, I'm the container of something much higher, because I didn't even really, like, it came together, and again, in this very natural and organic way. But you could see that what we're talking about is that you can, again, like yesterday, that there is not one answer. And what is the most important thing is that if we want to cultivate truth, it has to be our truths, like Marat's father's bonsai garden. And take all the lovable, lovely, the attached programs that we have, all these philosophies that we have, and see how we can, question them and see if we could reshape them and see if they actually make sense every day, So on that note, please be okay with feeling uncomfortable, and because I'm happy that it's ending in this way, because if we were out of here with like just a euphoric feeling, then it would just be like, it would be useless. We'd be as programmed as our president is, and as half of the world's authoritarian governments are. We would not be able to think and choose for ourselves.
It's a cliffhanger, Leeza. It's a cliffhanger. Thank you, Leeza.
I've gone over 2 minutes.
Next year.
Let's all go and feast, because our bodies need some sugar, and that's waiting for us. Thank you so much, all the respondents, all the presenters. You're absolutely awesome. You are stellar people. This was a stellar weekend. Keep it inside of yourself. Don't give it away. Be a child inside. I love you.